Have you ever had trouble understanding the Bible? How do we know what these verses say and where do we find them? Let's be honest, we aren't Bible scholars and none of us are theologians. We don't have all the time for in-depth Bible study and all the time it takes to compare scripture to scripture. Well, I have a tool that we all have access to, and this tool will, not may, it will help. It's called ChatGPT. You may have heard of it. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of how amazing this tool actually is, and hopefully that will convince you to start using it for your own study. And keep in mind, I keep saying this is a tool. Make sure you double check all the references to make sure they're actually aligning with scripture. But to be honest, ChatGPT does a pretty good job, and I'll show you right now. Starting off strong, one of the questions I first started asking it was, what is every Bible verse that references or alludes to the Trinity? So it actually gives us a short little synopsis of what the Trinity is in Christian thought right at the top here. And then it goes on to a couple of passages. And not only does it give you a couple of the passages here, it gives you a little bit of context as well, where it says, hey, this is one of the clearest references, as all three persons mentioned are in the same breath. And if we keep scrolling, we see that every single verse quotes it and also gives us that little bit of side note as well. And you can read all these to figure out, okay, does it make a good point or not? How can I compare scripture with scripture to see if this is accurate or not? He has 14 of them. And at the very end, it gives us a little summary, just re-emphasizing what it first said at the start. And the thing is, what I did was I asked it, are there more? I wanted to know, are there more passages that say that? And then it said, yeah, there's more passages. There's not just 14, there's more. That gives me 15 all the way till 24. It gives me another 10 so I can look through it and decide what I want to think about the Trinity. And then I asked ChatGPT a little bit more of a controversial question. And if you're thinking, hey, ChatGPT is biased, which it may be to some extent, but look at how it answers this question. I asked, what is every verse that talks about homosexuality? And then I added to that, is it referring to pedophilia or the actual acts of male-on-male intercourse? Kind of giving a specific, hey, this is what a common argument is against the verses that speak about homosexuality. So what do you, ChatGPT, have to say about that? Check out these responses. It does kind of the same thing as the Trinity, where it gives you a short little synopsis, a general, some people hold this view, others hold this. This is how it's interpreted some of the time. But then if we go to the passages, check this out. He gives us Sodom and Gomorrah, and he gives us Leviticus as well. And I want you to pay attention to this Leviticus passage because this one says, you shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. It gives us context, and it says, this verse is part of the Holiness Code, which contains various laws for the Israelites. It is often cited as a direct prohibition of male homosexual acts. Then he says, some argue it refers to a specific cult practice or non-consensual acts. So you may think, okay, ChatGPT is a little woke here. Well, hold on. Look what it says now. Though the plain reading suggests a broader condemnation of male homosexual relations. So it's even saying some people have tried to interpret it this way, but if we read the plain reading, it's pretty clear what it means. There's no getting around it. And then it gives us more passages, even 1 Corinthians, 1 Timothy, Romans. It gives us a couple, and you could ask it for more information as well, just like I did with the Trinity. And then it gives us some interpretation and debate. Who cares about that, to be honest? But it tries to do its best to try to remain neutral for the most part and give both sides. So that's kind of what it's doing here. But still, a great tool if you want to just look up all the verses yourself. And you can kind of ignore all the other ridiculous fluff it kind of gives to go alongside that. And then it gives us a little conclusion summary too, showing us what verses are typically used to condemn homosexuality as well. And then we get into a more fun question that I think may surprise some people that have never heard this before. I asked, what is every verse in the Old Testament that mentions the sun, moon, and the stars? You may be thinking, well, why are you asking this question? Well, let's get into it. It gives us that little synopsis. The sun, moon, and stars often mentioned in the Old Testament to describe creation, signs from God, celestial order, and even judgment. Hold on. even judgment? Let's go through and I'll show you. If we start from Genesis, it's pretty clear the creation account is literal creation. It's not talking about any symbolic meaning or anything like that. It actually means when it says sun, moon, stars, it's talking about the literal sun, moon, and stars. We see they have a verse about idol worship as well. But as we keep going down, we get to Isaiah 13:10. It says, "For the stars of the heavens and their constellations will not give their light, and the sun will be dark at its rising, and the moon will not shed its light." Wow, that sounds like end of the world stuff, right? We read all about that in Revelation and Matthew 24, the Olivet Discourse. It's all talking about end time stuff. Well, look at the context it gives, and this is the actual context. This prophecy speaks of a cosmic upheaval as part of God's judgment against the world? Nope. Babylon. The imagery of the sun, moon, and stars losing their light is used to signify divine wrath and great catastrophe. If you've never heard that the sun, moon, and the stars can reference this type of apocalyptic judgment on a nation, then I would highly suggest doing more research and typing in ChatGPT and asking that specific question. I'm sure you'll be surprised by the answer you get. And then if we continue all the way down, we can keep going through all these passages. It gives us 12 passages. We can ask for more, but it's given a lot here. And then I asked specifically, going along with what I was pointing out as Isaiah, what did the sun, moon, and stars symbolically represent? And it gives me a little synopsis. It talks about how it's often a symbol for God's creation, authority, judgment, and order. And then it gives us a list of what it just listed as well. It gives us the power and majesty of God, gives us a passage to go along with that, order and stability, more passages, and then we have rulers and kingdoms, and it gives us a passages for that. Isaiah 13, like it said before. This represents earthly authorities and the rise and fall of kingdoms under God's sovereignty. And if we think about this, well, what's one of the main passages where the sun, moon, and stars are mentioned? Well, think of Joseph. Remember when he had that amazing dream where the sun, moon, and stars bowed down to him? Well, when he told his family that dream, what did they say? What, the literal stars, sun, moon, and everything is going to bow down to you? That's crazy. No, they said, we are going to bow down to you? You're crazy. They automatically interpreted that the sun, moon, and stars was used to represent them, not the literal sun, moon, and stars. So obviously the people of that day had some type of knowledge and context of what this would symbolically represent. And it also goes on to show us in Ezekiel that it's also a reference to God's judgment on a nation. And this example is actually on Egypt, judgment on Egypt. So we've already seen it's used for Babylon. Now we see it's used for Egypt as well. And these aren't the only ones. There's more. But I would suggest looking that up if you haven't heard of that before. And then if we continue down, another question I asked was, how many times in the Bible does Jesus or the apostles say the second coming would be soon or about to happen or would happen in their lifetime or generation? And I asked it specifically, only quote the first 5 references because I didn't want to bog it down, and then just list their verse references after the 5th one. So kind of doing it in a list format. It first clearly said this: there are several passages in the New Testament where Jesus and the apostles speak of the second coming or end times as something that would soon happen in the near future or within their generation. I don't think anyone would deny that because clearly in Scripture it says it. We see a very clear example, Matthew 16:28. Truly I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. The context is Jesus speaking to his disciples, suggesting that some of them would witness his return or the establishment of his kingdom, which they're the same thing. And then it gives us other verses like Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, and then Revelation where it says, I'm coming soon. And then I asked it, well, give me additional references, but don't quote them, just because I wanted to get more references and look them up later. Look what it gave me. Another 10. Ask for more. Another 10. More. Another 10. 5 more I asked for, but this time I wanted them to quote them. And it gave me Hebrews 10:25. It gave me 1 Peter 4:7, James 5:8, Revelation 1:3, and Romans 13:12. All passages that also say the same thing that Jesus and the apostles were saying, that his return was imminent, soon to happen to them, not us. And I'll show you something I just typed in just to kind of get an idea. I asked it, how many passages in total are there that reference the imminence of Christ's second coming to his generation? I said, just tell me the number, don't list the verses. And it said there are at least 40. Okay, well, that's not what I asked. I didn't say, what's the least amount? I said, give me the number. So I said, what's the high number? And it said, there's over 60. Okay, over 60. And I said, okay, aren't there over 100? Because I know there's well over 100. It says, yes, you're correct. Some scholars estimate that there are over 100 passages in the New Testament. Okay, then I'm going to say, aren't there more? How many max? And then it goes on to say, yes, depending on how one interprets or categorizes the passages, there could be as many as 150 or more references in the New Testament. So, like I said, ChatGPT is a tool, and you have to keep asking it questions because sometimes it will give you answers that aren't actually hitting what you're actually looking for. So you got to keep asking it. But if you know what to ask and how to ask it, it makes it a little bit easier to get to some type of conclusion. So I hope I've kind of showed you just a few examples of how ChatGPT is a very powerful tool, and if you're a Christian, you need to start utilizing it. It makes Bible study so much more easier. You can have so many passages thrown at you at once, and then you have to do your due diligence and go through them, but it eliminates all the heavy lifting of trying to find those passages to begin with. You can ask it concepts, you can ask it anything, even what are quotes by a certain author when it comes to this. You can even ask it church history questions, and it will do a good job finding those answers for you. And the reason I asked it so much about the second coming and it clearly talking about that it's going to happen soon, well, that's because I believe it did happen in 70 AD because that's when Christ said it would. And like I said with the sun, moon, and stars, the judgment that was going to happen, the sun, moon, and stars falling from heaven, was a judgment on Israel, rebellious Israel that crucified Jesus and rejected the new covenant. They were finally done away with and judged. And that's when the new covenant was fully established. And the second coming was a spiritual coming in judgment and spiritual coming in raising the dead to life. And we as Christians know this type of resurrection language because we know that we were dead in our sin. But when we accept Christ, we are raised to life. And I know you probably have a lot of different questions in regards to that. Just check out more videos on my channel as I go into more depth with this. Or ask ChatGPT as well for more information also. But definitely check out my channel because I have a lot of videos covering this, and check out people like Don Preston, Michael Sullivan, William Bell, Zach Davis as well, because they have great videos on this topic as well. Anyways, I hope you guys found this helpful, and I hope you start utilizing ChatGPT no matter where you're at in your understanding of the scripture. The great part about the 21st century is we're not being bound by gatekeepers. We have access to so much information. We need to start utilizing that information for the glory of God and our own knowledge as well, so we can better understand God, to glorify Him and honor Him more. That's all I got. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you guys' thoughts are on ChatGPT and if you're utilizing it for your own studies, or you will be utilizing it now for your own studies. Take care. God bless.